Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We welcome all of you to the SkillsFuture Month in collaboration with Smart Nation 2021, organized by SkillsFuture Singapore and Smart Nation Singapore. Our speaker, Miguel, will be sharing the topic, Build a Game with JavaScript. Throughout the session, please feel free to post your questions in the Q&A tab that you see on the right panel. Do take note the questions will be moderated. Miguel, take the stage.
Thank you, Celestine. Hi. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this workshop where we're going to be building a game with JavaScript. Just based on the number of participants, I think, or I hope that there's a few people that joined me on Wednesday and a few new faces who maybe didn't want to do the intro and they still want to learn how to build a game in JavaScript. I hope the workshop still works for everybody. We'll do a quick recap of what we did on Wednesday. So people who maybe are coding the first line of JavaScript today can get on board with what we're trying to do, and then we'll run into the game. So let me share my screen and get started as soon as possible. Just before we dive into the code and the setup, I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Miguel. I take care of product and operations at Wagon, and I am here in this picture with the rest of my team, where you can see some of the other instructors that we have in data and software development. We are Wagon, a coding bootcamp that is acclaimed all over the world as one of the best choices to transition into tech or data. And we're here in Singapore for about 2 years, and we have bootcamps that are full-time and part-time, and there's thankfully to the Singapore government subsidized by the TIPP program. So if you're considering joining the tech revolution, please do check us out. With that being said, we can run directly into the course that we're going to be running today. And let's do some due diligence and setup. So in this platform that you see over here, we have all the information for today's course. Maybe for people who joined me on Wednesday, they already have seen this platform, but today you need a new link to get access to this material. You only have access to the course from Wednesday, not the one from today. So I'm just going to share with you on the chat this link, which will allow you to get access to all the content that we're doing today. With all panelists and attendees. And you should see it in the chat right now. So just follow the link and you should arrive to an interface that looks a lot like that. And if you see content that looks a little bit like this, where you have lectures, you'll have the slides that we're going to go through today, you have a replay of the session with another teacher, and you're also challenged to try to complete the exercise by yourself, and some takeaways as learning and good things to summarize the lecture. So about today, we're trying to get you set up. We're not going to need any of this, by the way. All this that you see with a setup where you need to download Sublime Text and open up Wagon's workshop website, you don't need any of this. We're going to be using a different setup that is way more efficient, using a portal called Replit. I'll share the link with you in a moment. So don't care about this slide at all. And here all drawings. We're not going to use this to set up. And if I can get back to the slides. And what we're going to build is something along these lines. We're going to have a little interface where we're going to have player one, player two, a random hand is going to be generated, and these two players are going to play rock, paper, scissors. We're going to have a button that listens to that event where we want to trigger a play, and we'll have some logic to determine who wins, right? So player one will have rock, paper, scissors at random. Player two will have rock, paper, scissors at random, and depending on the result, we'll know who wins and who loses, and we'll show the output in the middle of the screen. It's a very basic game, but we're going to apply some of the things that we learned on Wednesday and in a fun way, building a game that everybody knows. If along the way you have any questions, please throw them in the Q&A, throw them in the chat. I'll be picking every once in a while to make sure everybody's following along. So about JavaScript, which is what we're going to be working today for those that maybe didn't attend on Wednesday. JavaScript is a web language. It's the lingua franca of the web. Every browser speaks JavaScript. And whenever we're dealing with browsers, there's three technologies involved that we're also going to be concerned with today, which are HTML, which is everything that you need for content and structure in a website, CSS, which is what makes your website pretty, and JavaScript, which is the glue for the internet that manages all the interactivity, all the data tracking, all the cool effects that you would see on a website are generally managed with JavaScript. So we're going to be using these three technologies today. The HTML and the CSS that we're going to be using today is already set up for us, and we're just going to be writing the JavaScript. Before JavaScript, if you wanted to do a website, you only needed HTML and CSS. You just needed to care about the content, and HTML already has some properties that allow you to do hyperlinks and some interactivity. So you didn't really need to care about JS, but at some point, the web was becoming more and more popular. There were demands for more features, and a scripting language was needed. So that kicked in the need for JavaScript when it was launched with Netscape a really long time ago. I'm old enough to remember Netscape, but I'm pretty sure that lots of the people present today don't even know what Netscape is, and that's all right. But after JavaScript is when in late 90s, early 2000s, you start seeing all these pop-up windows. Netscape is creating a lot of business opportunities by letting developers build on top of the browser. And at some point, Internet Explorer joins the internet race and creates their own JavaScript kind of called JScript. And every browser was creating kind of their own version of JavaScript, which eventually triggered the browser wars, where lots of companies were trying to get the best window into the internet because the opportunity was absolutely massive, right? And Chrome started to enter the game, Firefox, Opera, Safari, Explorer, right? Everybody was racing to get as many users on their platform as possible. And after 2009 is where JavaScript really takes off. And Google uses a technology called the V8 engine to run JavaScript within their browser. And there's a developer that manages to extract that V8 engine away and use it just for also backend coding, for managing applications that are not in the browser. And lots of people who already knew JavaScript to do things in browsers all of a sudden are super empowered to build all over the web and also build on servers. And that makes the popularity of the language explode. Today, we have a huge JavaScript ecosystem. It's really a professional language for development, where at the beginning in the early 90s, it was a very basic scripting language. Today, it's rich with lots of really cool properties that allow you to create very complicated event-driven systems like Netflix, for instance. And there's very popular frameworks like React, Angular, and whatnot. So that on the story of JavaScript, it's super popular because it's basically the lingua franca of the web. Like year after year, it always comes on top of all the surveys. And with that being said, we can start looking into how to manage it. Do a quick recap of what we did on Wednesday, and start coding. So for that, let me get you set up. You need to go to this website, Replit at Miguel Jimenez. Let me send it to you on the chat. So I'm sharing it right now. That's for anybody who could not get into the program yet. I'm seeing some questions saying, do I need to sign up? And yeah, if you wanna join the platform, then you need to sign up to join. And I'm posting just another link to this thing called Replit. What you should be seeing after you click on the link is something like this. And you will have to sign up for a free account on Replit to be able to use it. And the next thing that you need to go to is on all these snippets, you will see this one, rock, paper, scissors, a little game to learn the basics of JavaScript. So you're going to need to click on this one. And when you click, you need to go to this button over here that says fork. Format, draw, let's clear all the drawings. And you need to go over here on fork. And this will get you to an interface where you will have HTML, CSS, and JavaScript loaded with a console and all ready to play for today's game. And you don't need more setup than that. I'm going to leave a couple of minutes to make sure that everybody's following this and that everybody's on board. If at any point anybody has trouble, please send me a message on the Q&A or throw it on the chat, please. So I have from Jennifer Tan, sorry, do I need to sign up to join? So if what you mean is signing up to the platform, the Learn platform that you saw before, yes, you need to sign up. To use Replit, I believe if you go onto Fork directly, depending on how it's set up, if they're A/B testing you or not, it might let you to go through without signing up. How to sign up? To sign up on the Learn platform, please follow the link that I left on the chat. I'm also typing an answer right now. And if you want to go to Replit, you just need to follow the other link. And able to send the link here. It said something went wrong. Again, if you're having trouble joining the Learn platform that you saw before, this one, and you see that something went wrong, maybe try again in 5 minutes, because we have 100 people trying to join the platform at the same time. And our server is modest. So maybe if you try in 5 minutes, it might be okay. You are still completely okay to follow through the lecture without joining right now. But the Replit, you definitely need if you want to engage, if you want to code with me today. So just posting it over there again because somebody missed it. This is the bare minimum we need for the session. This is answered. And somebody said the voice is echoing. I'm sorry about that. We were testing the sound and it feels okay. Hi, as I said, Jennifer, I'm sorry you cannot join the batch right now. The link works. It's just that maybe the server is overloaded. So you might have to wait 5 minutes and maybe try in a little bit. No worries. Good. So let's go into some coding. I hope everybody's on Replit and you go to this rock, paper, scissors snippet. I hope that you understood that you need to fork it and then you'll have a copy of it where you can start working. And first, let's just have a 10-minute refresher of JavaScript and let's have an introduction of what we have over here. So on the left-hand side, you have your files. We have index.html. This keeps the structure of the website. Index.js, this is where we're going to keep our JavaScript. Main CSS, where we're going to have our style. And then finally, assets, where I think we just have a logo of Wagon. And if you want to see how everything compiles together into a website, you can just run it. And you will see that this is the website that we get, which is actually live at this particular address. When you fork it, you will have your own address, which means that you can see your own website and also share it with friends if you want to share what you've learned today. If you go over here, you'll go into a website that is actually being served by Replit, where we can see the thing that we're building live. Just might take a while to load. It's probably being served at the moment. And over here, what we have is the file that we're operating upon. So over here, we have index.js. Over here, we have index.html. This is all the structure of our website. And we can change the content if we want to. So we can call this player 1 as well. And when I decide to run this again, notice how this has just changed, which is fantastic. And then I have my main CSS, where I have some properties and I can change things if I want to. So if I wanted to make the whole background black, I can transform it to black, which is going to be very nasty for your eyes. You're not going to be able to see much. But Control Z, reverse it, go back to a nicer color, and then I have everything, right? So I have full control on my project, and finally have index.js, which is where I can run my JavaScript. Here I have the output, and here I have a console where I can also type JavaScript. So I can say hello if I want to. And this will return hello. So this is like the overview of the environment when we work in. Every time you do changes, if you're coding with me, it's important that you click on run so you can see what is going on. Shireen is saying, I have a different screen that you are seeing. Is it very different, or because it's light, or but is the code the same? Because I have it in. If anybody's not getting the same, can they tell me what they mean by not the same? Is that it, do you have access to the same files or no? So the difference between, I'm getting a question from Daryl, what is the difference between index.js versus the console? So the console is just a place where you can evaluate JavaScript quickly. It will also let me know if I'm running errors or anything like that. The index.js is the JavaScript that is going to be applied to the project and compiled on the website that you see on top. And you will see how, if that is a little bit too abstract, you'll see the difference in a moment. Shireen, I can see the coding, but I don't see index assets index.js. As I said, Shireen, just want to make sure that everybody's on board. Make sure you please go to this website, https://replit.com, and type in the answer for you right there. And when you go on that website, please click on rock, paper, scissors and go to fork right here. And that should give you a copy of the exact project that I'm working with right now. Okay, very good. So let's start refreshing our JavaScript. Anonymous attendee, I click forward, but nothing works. That's strange. I tested this extensively yesterday, up to 50 people. It was working pretty well. I'm not sure if it's really, really bad. You can try to open your own REPL and create your own files over here. Or you can access the recording later. But it should work just fine. Cool. So variables. Variables are basically boxes to store data or values. So I can have a variable called name, I could call Miguel, and that is stored as a string. String is how we represent text in JavaScript, and I can try to log it. And if I try to get that variable, you will see it on the console over here. It's showing up on the console over here. Let me move my drawer over here. And everything that I print over there on console log is going to print it out. It's going to be printed out on the console on the other side. We can console log more things. We can have numbers. So I could have 100. And with numbers, I can run also operations. So if numbers is 100, I could add 12 to numbers. And that will give me 112. I also have booleans. So I can say sunny is true. And just like anything, I can console log sunny. And it will be thrown into the terminal. I can try to play with this logic and say, well, I can have a const human false. And I can see what happens when I mix them up. So I can say console log sunny and human. And if I need these two to evaluate, since one of them is false, everything will return false. If I change this to true, this will be true. And if I change it to the OR operator, I just need one of them to be true for it to evaluate to true. This is interesting because we're going to be playing with this when we actually build in our game with this kind of logic. And we can also have objects. So we can have const Miguel, and an object starts with curly braces, and the name colon is Miguel Jimenez, and the profession is product guy. I can console log Miguel, and I will get the whole object on the console. You can see it over here. But I can also access some of the properties. So if I only wanted the name, I can do .name. And that will give me the name. If I wanted the profession, I can get the profession. And you can see that the editor already has a little bit of auto-completion that helps me. Pretty good, right? So that's on variables. That's the refresher on variables, basically boxes where we can store different kinds of values. We can also have lists. And lists or arrays are expressed with square brackets. And instead of Miguel, I can have teachers. And I'm going to have few strings inside. I'm going to have Miguel, Prima, Ashley, Solomon, a few of the level 1 teachers. I can console log teachers. And that will give me the whole list. But if I just wanted one of them, I can go at position 0, which is the first one. This will give me Miguel. This will give me Prima. This will give me Ashley, and so forth. Right, so that's some variables. Looking at the Q&A, Jernia could finally access. Fantastic, thank you. And I guess that made sense. We're going to move into conditionals. So conditionals allow us to control the flow of the code. Before we have the weather, which was sunny, true, and humid, false. And we can say, well, if it's sunny and humid, put it true at the beginning so it's easier to read. If both are true, we're going to console log, wait for the evening to do anything. Else if it's sunny and it's not humid, we're going to console log. Let's do some jogging. Else, we're going to say stay at home, watch Netflix. Cool. So we have that. And now when we run the code, this will evaluate. If these both are true, then it will go directly into line 13. Let's check it out. Cool. You get wait for the evening to do anything. If I turn humid to false, using this bang at the beginning of the term reverses the logic. So if it's supposed to be true, then it will be false. If it's supposed to be false, it will be true. So I'm saying, well, if it's sunny and not humid, so humid is not true, then let's go do some jogging. And we get some jogging. If I have both as false, then I will get that to watch Netflix. I can have if, else, if, and I can also have if, else directly. This will also work. Watch Netflix, and you could even have it only as an if, but then I will not have the other case. So now nothing will print. I need both of these to be true. Okay, so quick rundown to write conditionals. If you're trying to type them with me, the most difficult part at the beginning, or you're a beginner, is getting the template right. So make sure that the way you're doing it is something like if the condition goes into round brackets and then curly braces, and then you can start running your logic. Else, brackets, other logic, like that. That's that at the beginning, it makes sense to template it, and then it was, okay, I'm gonna work from my condition. So sunny equals true. This is the 3 quotes operator. We can also use it for comparisons. And run my logic. I'm just going to console log whatever. Else, I'm going to console log whatever. And working it step by step, you reduce mistakes, and it's way less frustrating. Cool. So that's conditional, very quickly. And then we have functions, which are ways to put code together and make it reusable. By the way, if anybody's asking why do we have these lashes over here and they're ignored, it's because they're comments. So in JavaScript, you put 2 forward slashes, you're creating a comment, and anything that you write over there will be ignored. So to define a function, you can have a constant called greet, let's say. It takes a name. And you need this fancy arrow syntax. And over here, you just type your code. And within the function, I can use all the variables that have been called by the function. So I'm going to return something along the lines of hello, name. And with this syntax, with these backticks that you're seeing over here, you can see that I'm passing a string, hello, and over here, $, curly brace, and the variable that I'm passing inside, I'm interpolating. So it's like throwing a string within a string, or throwing a variable within a string. To call this function that I defined, I can say greet, and now pass a string. Let's greet Miguel, and let's greet Prima. And I run this code, and this is just being returned. Let's console log it instead. Whoops. Where's all my code? Where did it go? There we go. Okay. So console log. We're going to console log this instead. Cool. And I get hello Miguel, hello Prima. So I don't need to write the same code over and over again. I can just call a function and save a lot of mental space with that. Right, and I can greet the whole team with that. Cool. So that is how we define functions. We can build all this together to interact with the DOM. The DOM is the document object model. For those that came on Wednesday, you already know what it is. For those that are new, the DOM is basically this that you see over here. Let's go to any given website. For instance, join our coding bootcamp in Singapore. And whenever you are going to a website, the server that is in charge of that website gives you a bunch of HTML. HTML, when you inspect a website, is something that looks a lot like this. You can do this in Chrome as I do it at the moment. And you can select elements and you will see the DOM live in front of you. Usually any website has like a basic structure when you always see two things. The HTML thing, the head that is not visible, is just metadata for the website, the name, pictures that should be associated with it whenever you share it, things for tracking and stuff like that, scripts. And then on the body is all the thing that you see. So if, for instance, if I delete this using my keyboard, then the whole website disappears. And I'm not modifying the original website. I just modified the HTML that I got from the server. If I reload, everything goes back to normal. Right? And I can isolate elements and try to modify them. So I could get this H1 and join our coding bootcamp in Singapore. So I want to change it to Malaysia. Then it changes on the website directly. And our coding, say our data science, bootcamp in Malaysia. And now I'm editing the content of the website, but I'm doing that manually right now. I want to do that with JavaScript. And I want to do it maybe when anybody touches on a button, then something happens. Right? So I can build that interactivity. And that's what I want to do on rock, paper, scissors. The first interaction that I want to have maybe is have a function or have something at the beginning. How do we actually write an interaction? We are going to do on this button, I want to add an event listener that whenever I click, you can see something happening on the screen. For that first, I need to be able to select that button. And that button on my HTML is all the way here. Is this play button with this particular ID. So what I want to do is select it, and to select it, I'm just going to store it in a variable. And I'm going to say document, which stands for the DOM, query selector, which is a method that I get from JavaScript. And I'm going to pass a string inside and say, play BTN. And this pound sign that you see at the beginning, what I'm saying is like, hey, get me an element in the DOM that has an ID called play BTN. And an ID is this. It's a way of marking up stuff in the DOM so you can locate it and also give it visual rules. So bound to this ID, there's probably some CSS that you can see over here, play BTN. You see that it has a font size of 25 pixels. Let's make it a bit bigger. Run it. And now let's play is way bigger, right? And transform it to back to 25 pixels. And now it's back to the original size. So I'm using this idea of an ID to get the element on JavaScript, keep it on memory, and be able to manipulate it and have it listen to events. What I want to do now is button, I want to add an event listener. And there's many listeners that you can use. A browser can listen to basically anything that you want. Swipes, touches, double clicks, taps, whether you're moving your cursor up and down, anything that you could imagine. What I want is, hey, whenever I click, I want a function to fire. And we're going to define this function with this empty brackets, arrows, and the curly braces, right? And what I want to do is whenever I click, I want to console log hello world. I'm going to run the code. And now what I expect to happen is like, whenever I click on this thing, something should show in the console. If it doesn't happen, then I made a mistake and I need to work on the bug. There you go, right? So every time I'm clicking, you get hello world over there. I'm going to post this code in the chat. So for whatever reason you're having trouble writing it, you can just copy paste it and experience it yourself. So you can try it out. And this is like a very fundamental building block of JavaScript, being able to put event listeners on stuff. And whenever you click on that thing or you interact with it, then something happens. The whole idea is when you do something, then something happens and you get some feedback. If you go this Google Meet, for instance, right? In the moment I click on new meeting and you see that there's this window appearing, this is probably triggered by JavaScript. Or in the moment I enter a code or nickname and I try to join, there's probably some JavaScript in the background that is going to trigger stuff. So it's absolutely quintessential to web development and just programming in the web. So with that being said, if we know how to use variables, if we know how to do conditional logic, if we can wrap that logic into functions, and then we can listen to events that will trigger those functions, we can build a game. And we can start building the rock, paper, scissors game that we have for today. So this is when it gets fun, right? We have our game spec for today. And this is the MVP. This is what I definitely want to build before I leave today. And if we're doing well on time, then I have other things that are optional. As MVP, what I want to do is whenever the user clicks on let's play, 2 hands are going to be generated for each player, and the screen outputs which player would win. And so that's like the very basics. Optional is get the names of the players at the beginning and add them on the screen, right? So now I have player 1, player 2, generic. What I would like to have is maybe Prima and Miguel, or Josh and Jack, or whatever. And on every random play, I want to keep count of the wins and losses of each player, right? So that's the whole idea. Before I dive into the specifics or how we're going to start modeling this logic, I just want to stop and ask, are there any questions? Please throw it in the Q&A. This was a very quick explanation because it's more of a deep dive. The session that we had, the intro session, was on Wednesday. So I just want to make sure that everybody's following, that everything made sense. If there's anything that I should demo again, please let me know, those kind of things. I'll clear this. Okay, so a few questions. Let's try to tackle them one by one. So for the first one, index HTML assets, index.js, main CSS. What's the purpose? So index HTML gives you the structure and content of your website. If you see player 1, for instance, over here, you might notice that this player 1 is suspiciously similar to this player 1. So this HTML is creating the content for this player 1. If I change it back to player 1 and I run the code again, you can see that it changed to player 1. And when I have all this HTML, the browser parses it and creates what I was mentioning before, which is the DOM. On assets, this is the folder, and you could call it anything you want, but usually you keep it for graphics, SVGs, vectors, images, and stuff like that. So here we have a logo, PNG, and that logo is the one that is showing at the top of the screen. It's just, I cannot really scroll that much, but it's a Wagon logo that it's just showing on the screen again. And main CSS, it's for styling. So this is what is making the website pretty, quote unquote, and what is managing the fonts, the colors, and the display of things. Notice, for instance, this play button has a color that is red. Let's change it to blue. And let's run it. And you can see that how now that changed to blue, right? So now that changed, Control Z, Control Z, Control Z, and again, back to Wagon red. Yeah, that's good, right? So that's for styling, and then index.js, it's for interactivity. This is where we're gonna write our JavaScript that whenever we do stuff on the website, things are gonna change. So summary, index.html structure, assets for images, graphics, index.js, interactivity, main CSS, style. Please demo the function again. Sure. So if I want to create a function, I store in a variable with constant, and let's greet someone. And what I want to greet is whatever I get from the function, right? So I want to say something like, hello, and I need a name over here. So I'm going to pass that as an argument into the function. And to make sure that I can access it in a string, I'm going to interpolate it. Now, if I want to call the function, I say greet, and between brackets, I pass an argument inside. This is expecting one argument, so I just pass one thing inside, and I just say, Miguel. I run this thing, and you can see hello, Miguel. So this is how you write a function. Let me just put it in the chat so you can try it yourself. And for the demo, I'm using Replit. So everything that we're doing, you can do it yourself. This is the website live, by the way. You can go to this website. If you came a little bit later, go to that website, click on fork, and you'll have access to the same template, the same boilerplate that I'm using. And how do you do the name thing? It's just what I did. So that's good. Thank you very much, everyone, for the questions. Hope that helped. Hope that clarified. So let's start working through the MVP, right? First, before I write any code, I want to see step by step what is it that I want to build just by changing the HTML, right? So at the very beginning, I'm going to have this rock, paper, scissors, right? And this player wins, which is somewhere here in this object, and sorry, in this box that says result area on line 21. I have this player one wins, right? This is my result. I can change it. My result. But I want this to be empty at the beginning. So that's one. At the beginning, I don't want a result here. Right? I can have on player one and div ID, font size. This is the V that I'm using. I can have, instead of a V, I can have a man. Let's have raising hand man. And on the other one, I have player two, and I have a hand. I can have man, no good, or okay man, why not, right? So I can run that, right? And I have these two guys over here. And whenever I click let's play, whenever I click on this thing, I want this to change, generate a random hand. So this is going to be paper, let's say. This is going to be scissors. And this is step 2, right? And if this is the result of the random generation, what needs to show in the middle is who wins, right? In this case, it would be player 2. Right? So the third step is on my result area, it's really something like player 2 wins. Cool. And that leaves me set up, right? That would be the whole flow. Whenever I click again on let's play, then I need to keep doing that over and over and over. So that is the flow. Of course, now I'm doing everything manually. I don't want that to do. I don't want to do this manually. I want to do it. I want to do it with JavaScript. Somebody's asking me, can we use website to do Python coding? Yeah, you can also use Replit to write Python, Ruby, JavaScript, Elixir, any language that you want. It has amazing support. So this being said, we can start thinking about the stuff that we need, right? I need to select many elements on my HTML that are going to be interacting. This document query selector thing that I did before, I'm going to have to do it many times. So I know that I need these elements. I know that I need this result area, and I know that I need the button. So button is going to be on the document query selector. And let's look at our button. It has an ID of play button, play BTN. So let's bring that over to our index.js. That's step 1. I want to come, the next thing that I want to make sure is that I get the result area. So my result area needs to be whatever I have over here with this ID, result area. That's result area. I know I need to have a place where I can change this hand and where I can change this hand. So I can have player 1, const player 2. And these are going to be document query selector as well. And let's see how they're called. On my index.html, this place where the hand is called player 2. The other one is called player 1. Excellent. And finally, what I need is an array of all the choices that are possible. So I need something like hand, paper, and scissors. Sorry, rock, paper, and scissors. So we can have const choices, for instance. And this is going to be an array that is going to have 3 strings. It's going to have the victory hand. That shows a little bit weird, but it's actually the victory hand is just the editor. The hand that is just a normal hand for paper, and the fist for the fist. All right, so that is all the stuff that I need. Now, I want to trigger the game when I play. And to play, that means that I need an event listener on the button. So I can say button add event listener, and when I click on the event listener, I want to do stuff. Console log, hello. So when we run this code, let's make sure that everything is working well. I click on Let's Play and I get the hello. I want to make sure that the rest of the stuff is also working. So I want to console log player one, the inner text. Inner text. Play. Okay, so I'm getting a hand over there. And result area, the inner text will give me the text. When I click it, cool, player two wins, right? So it looks like I have selected the right stuff and my choices are my choices. It's defined like that. So I'm going to post all this code. So if you want to code along or you're trying to get it going, you can use it and put it in your own project. So first question, can functions return stuff like true or false so that we can add logic into our functions and we can call win user to return true if user is won? Definitely. And we're going to follow a similar approach. We're going to be using true false logic to know who wins or who loses. How do we input the emojis? So I'm cheating a bit to go faster. I'm using an application called Rocket. If you want to put the emojis in, you can just copy paste them from an emoji page, or you can just get them from the code that I just put over. So if you go to the chat and you go to const choices and you copy that line of code, then you'll have the emojis as well. Sure. I'll post everything on the Q&A. So that should be there on Answered now, one of the last ones. We should have the code, the code as well. The code over there as well. Cool. So now we're going to be doing something very important in programming, which is pseudocode. Like before you even think about the code, you think about just in plain English or in your language of choice, how should the program behave? And now when I click, I need to generate a random hand for player one. Generate a random hand for player two. Compare the hands. And based on that comparison, update the player one placeholder update the player two placeholder and show the winner. And that is all the logic that we need. So one of the first challenges that we have is how to generate a random hand for a given player. We have const choices. And if you remember, we were talking later, choices has indices of 0, 1, and 2. So what I would like to do is generate a random number between 0, 1, and 2. For that, I can use math random in JavaScript. And math random will give me always a floating point between 0 and 1. If I use it with like this, random, and I multiply it by 3, it will always give me a number between 0, 1, or 2. If that I've managed to floor, that I get an exact number that is 0, 1, or 2. Well, if I floor it. 2, 2, 2, eventually 1. Yeah. Right? Just randomly, I will get 0, 2, or 1. So that's perfect, right? Because I can do that exact code, and for each of them, I can say, well, player one choice as a constant is going to be the result of generate hand. And generate hand is going to be a function. And player 2 choice. Let's make these variables a little bit shorter. Let's call it one choice or one hand and two hand. This generate hand, what is it going to do? Let's have another function. Const generate hand is a function that will get a random value from choices. So we're going to get brand index as a constant, and that's going to be the result of calling exactly this code that we have over here. Right? This magic will give me a number between 0, 1, and 2. And what I want to return is from choices, the rand index. And this will give me a number from 0, 1, or 2, and then compare them, right? 1, 2 hand, and so forth. So now whenever I click, I just want to make sure that I log these two values. And I'm going to log them into an object first. And I'm going to call that one hand, second, two hand. So I want to do this every time I generate something. Let's run this code. Let's see if it works. If it doesn't, we debug it. Cool. So you see, for my first time now, I got this randomly. When I got this randomly, I got a draw. Now the first wins. Now the second wins. Now I have a draw again, and so forth. So this seems to be working. See, there's a question open. Yeah, I will. Hey, Jennifer, I will just copy paste the code over here and type answer. Hopefully you can see it now. Cool. All right, so until now I have generated my choices, which is great. Now I can compare them, right? I managed to do this. Managed to do these two actions. Now I need to compare the hands, and now here I need a conditional. So I'm going to say, well, if, and I can say, actually, first and second are much better. First and second. And I'm going to say, well, if the first, and let's enter the winning conditions, or even better, let's enter first the draw conditions. So if the first is exactly the equals to the second, then this guy, the result area, needs to be draw. For sure. And we're going to update player 1 and player 2 with first and second. So player 1 inner text is going to be first, and player 2 inner text is going to be second. And you could argue that this is something that needs to happen no matter what the result is. So you can always do that and then just focus on the comparison. Let's make sure this is working. We run. Yeah, seems to be working. Like, I'm getting new results every single time. Very good. Cool. So now I can go back to comparing the hands. If the first is equal to the second, the result area is going to be draw. Now, else if, and now let's try to enter the winning conditions for the first. And that's a lot, right? That means that if the first is a hand, so by a hand I mean paper, and the second is rock, so fist. Or the first is a rock, so fist. And the second is paper, sorry, scissor, so a V. Or the first equals a scissor and the second equals paper, which is a hand. Cool. So if these are the winning conditions for the first one, right? The first one is paper, and then the second needs to be rock for that to win, for him to win. Let's align that over there. And otherwise, the first equals if the first is rock, then the second needs to be scissor for the first to win. If the first is a scissor, then the second needs to be paper for it to win. So if all this happens, the result area in our text needs to be player one wins. Else, if it's not a draw and the player one didn't win, then it stands to reason that it's the player two that won. Player two wins. Cool. And let's see if that checks out, or we need to debug something. Let's run the code. Let's play. At the beginning, this is something that we have by default, by the way. We need to change this. Let's play. Draw makes sense. Draw, draw, draw. Player one wins. That makes sense. Player two wins. That makes sense. Player two wins. Makes sense. Draw makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah, seems like we're passing the test. Not too bad. Not too bad. Not too bad. So that's pretty good. Let's go into the index HTML and fix a couple of things, right? Now we can go to the result area, take all the code from the result area away, because you don't want to show anything at the beginning. And at the very beginning, the player one doesn't have a hand. Man. Massage man. Woman over here. Construction woman, woman, walking woman, weightlifting woman. I wouldn't like it. Nice. There's no face. Why not? Run it. Cool. Right. So now I have my two players over there. They're ready to play. Let's play. Draw. Player one wins. Draw. Player two wins. And so forth, right? My MVP for the game is complete, guys. So the MVP is ready with this code. Let me share it with you. It's just that I think the chat is not available for you to copy anything. And there's no open question, so I kind of paste it over there. But did this make sense? Any questions on this step before we move into maybe something a little bit more advanced? Anyone? Okay. Cool. So our MVP is ready. Let's look at the Q&A. How to save the code? Hey, Dave, if you're in Replit, it's saving automatically. you can start an account and it will work. Can we copy paste the code here? Absolutely. We get all the code that we have until now. Answer, send. How to save to external drive? Yeah, then you will have to create your own folder with your own files, and the files will need exactly these extensions and exactly this hierarchy, and you can copy paste all the code and then you'll have it in your own drive. I'm asked to change player 2 to win, to the lady icon win instead. There's a, let me see, probably I can do that. What is it, lady? Doesn't find it by lady, win. Doesn't seem to be working. Woman. Cartwheeling, juggling. Gonna have somebody surfing for now then. When to align with semicolon and when no need to? It's a very good question, Vivi. Like in JavaScript, you should, for most times, to avoid any problems, to end your lines with semicolons. Sometimes when you're assigning variables or you don't have, you have isolated logic, it's okay. Like the program just runs fine. But it's good practice to do it. Like usually I use an editor that puts them for me automatically, so I don't need to care. But it's good practice to do it all the time. Thank you for that. Cool. Cool. So let's put some semicolons over there so they don't get confused. It's all good. All good. Cool. So let's look at what other things we have. Optionals. Get names for the players at the beginning of the name. So we're going to do something cool. We're going to use prompt, which is a built-in JavaScript function that will give me a window on the screen. I can use prompt, and I can say hello, and you can see that hello gets returned over here after the function, right? So to the prompt, I can pass a string. Please enter your name, Miguel, and Miguel, right? So what I would like to do is have a prompt at the beginning, even before I generate the hands and everything, that asks for the name of player 1 and for the name of player 2. And we're going to be using that to change the names of the players at the very beginning, before we even run the game. So we can have const. We need first we need to select where these player 1s are. So and player 2, so we can change the values. See that we have name and name. The classes are called exactly the same. So let's give it a name 1, name 2. And if you want to select classes, you need the same code, query selector, but a little difference. So name 1 is document query selector, and we're going to use a little dot for that, and name 1. Exactly the same code for name 2. Before we run our event listener, we are going to ask for 2 prompts, and we're going to say that name 1 inner text is going to be the result of prompting, and please enter name for player 1, and do the same for player 2. So we're going to get 2 prompts at the beginning. And what I expect is that after entering the prompt, this value, player 1 and player 2, gets updated. Let's see if that works. Okay, so you see enter player for player 1, Miguel. Player 2, Christine, my wife, and there we go. I have Miguel and Christine over here, and I change that to let's play. You can see that these changed because I changed the name of the class. So in my main CSS, I have name, we had a font size of 25 pixels. What I'm going to do is name 1, name 2. So I go back to I got to the same that I have at the beginning, Miguel and Christine. Cool, and now that looks like I had it before. Right, so now we have those prompts, which is fantastic. And optionally, we also want to keep count of the wins and losses of each player. So now that means that also after every hand that it gets generated, after this click, we also need to update values over here. I want to keep track of the wins. So let's go here on my index. After this div on the player 2, I want to have maybe a P that says P stands for paragraph. I have wins, and after that I'm going to have a span with ID that is going to be score 2, and that's going to start at 0. And we're going to have the same for player 1. And score 1 starts at 0. Let's run that. Miguel, Christine. Cool. And I have win 0 and win 0. I want to keep track of that as I move through the game. So that means that same process, I'm going to have to select the scores. Const score 1, document, query selector, and that's going to be with an ID of score 1, and the same for score 2. I want this player 1 scores to start at 0 as well, so I'm going to keep tally of them in memory. Let player 1 score start at 0, and player 2 score start at 0. The difference between const and let: const is for values that are not going to change in your program. Let is for values that are going to be changed and updated. So since this is going to be added numbers as we add counts and rounds, we need to declare it with let. So now that we have that, I just want to make sure that my ID is well declared. Name1 and name1 is fine, but score 1, score 2. And on my index HTML, that's score 1, score 2. That looks good. Perfect. So these are my choices. After I compare the hands, if player 1 wins, what I want to do is update the value of player 1, of player 1 score. So I want this to be itself plus 1. Right? Imagine that I have a variable, let a sum that starts at 0. And if I do sum plus 1, sum is not defined, but I just defined it. Doesn't let me manage it in the scope. Let me go over here to the console in the browser and open this up so you can see what I'm talking about. On the console, I'm going to have let sum be 0 and sum I can do plus 1. And now my sum is 1, now 2, and 3, and 4, and so forth. Right? That's the code that I'm writing. So now I want to add that player score plus 1, and my player 1 I score 1 on the on the code, inner text needs to be equal to whatever player 1 score is at the moment. Otherwise, we're going to do that for player 2. And player 2 score. Let's run that. Hopefully, I don't get any errors. Miguel, Christine, cool, wins, losses, let's play. Cool, so Christine just won, increase that by 1, draw. If there's draw, there's no updates, so all good. Player 1 wins, wins 2, wins 2, wins 3. Seems like I'm leading. If it's random, it will eventually even out. We'll never get too far ahead. So yeah, this is our JavaScript game. Let's just round up for all the things that we checked, right? So we've learned a lot about variable definitions, how to select things on the DOM, how to generate functions that do work for us, how to have conditional logic that help us get the stuff done that we need, and how to trigger that behavior and add things progressively. Any questions? Let me send you all the code if you post a question. Type answer. Sorry, somebody was asking for a cheat sheet for JavaScript code. I can send you one for GitHub. JavaScript, GitHub, cheat sheet. And this has 21 5 stars, so it must be decent. So let me put that in the chat. And I can, of course, send you the whole code. Let me get the code over here. Type the answer, you go, just send the code to everyone. You are also invited to just go into the learning platform whenever, probably now it's a little bit more discharged, you can go through it and work through it step by step. Like instead of just getting the code and see it work, make sure that you're going step by step through it, understanding the steps, so you're really internalizing principles. I'm getting a question. How does score 1 text get updated to win number? Oh, so the win part is templated. Check this out. On the index HTML, wins is always part of the paragraph. The only thing that changes is this element that is inside this pan, which is 0, 1, 2. So the wins is always left there. This is the only thing that really changes. Can use var instead of let to declare player score? Indeed, you can use var for everything. It's just not considered the standard anymore. So if this modern JS, it's actually probably pretty good because it will let you know about ES6, which is the modern way of writing JavaScript. But you can still use var. It's compatible, but just not considered the standard or the way of doing things in JavaScript right now. Where can you practice JS? Lots of things. You can go to Code Academy. If you like online learning, they have great courses. If you're into a little bit more advanced stuff, or you already know the basics, I would recommend Educative. Here at Wagon, we have a deal with Educative, so all our bootcamp graduates get 6 months of free support with Educative. If you want to go more into the fundamentals. Something that we recommend for our own work is learn JavaScript in 20 days. Is it? Was boss? JavaScript 30, not JavaScript 20. This is a great course as well. And it's absolutely free, and you can get a lot of good practice with the kind of things that we've been doing today. Well, what level of JavaScript does one have to be employable in a role that requires JavaScript knowledge? Well, what is the role, right? And if you need to be a product manager and you need to know that your app deals with JavaScript, but you are not really writing any JavaScript yourself, or hardly, it's okay to know just the very basics and know how to interact with APIs, and that's it. If you actually want to be a JavaScript developer, you need to know a lot of JavaScript, my friend. You need to be okay with a lot of things. Let me show you something. Prompt and roadmaps. So this is a great resource that will guide you through all the things that a modern front-end developer, front-end is code for somebody who writes a lot of JavaScript, needs to know. We cover a lot of this in our bootcamp, but yeah, it's a very long road. And it's hard to do it on your own, but it's possible. It's possible. Can I get contact to learn more? Absolutely. You can always contact me at Miguel Jimenez at lewagon.com. And always happy to have a chat. And we also run lots of workshops on not only on JavaScript, other technologies, Python, Ruby. So feel free to check us out. We're on Meetup, we're on Eventbrite. And I mean, I'm always happy to help people learn. If you don't want to do our bootcamps, that's fine. You can always come to our free workshops and then try to self-learn. That's always very good as well. And if you need resources or you need any other places to learn, that's absolutely okay. Do you have the tic-tac-toe program? You mean if I have a tic-tac-toe coded myself at my fingerprints? No, I don't, unfortunately. Very good, guys. So just if there are no other big questions, I would just like to thank everybody for showing up today on a Friday. It's a reminder of who we are. We're Wagon, and we're here in Singapore doing the best education in web development and data science. And just wanted to check in case you are not clear. Info, TIPP, Wagon. We have a partnership with IMDA, and if you're Singaporean or PR, you have up to 70% off on our courses, and that's not actually correct. If you're over 40, you can actually have up to 90%. So do check us out if you're interested in knowing more about what we do. If you're trying to get a career in tech, over 80% of the people who are under this program get an employment, get a job in 80% in 6 months or less. So thank you very much, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. Contact me if you have any other questions, and try it out. Learn JavaScript. It's really a skill that pays off, whether you're thinking of becoming a developer or just dealing with the tech side of things. Knowing some JavaScript can take you far. Absolutely worth it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the kind words. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon. Oh, somebody was asking which IDE am I using. So I personally use VS Code most of the time. It's just code that I was writing today on Ruby, different language. But the IDE that you were seeing throughout the session is Replit. And it's pretty cool too for developing on the web. It's they're becoming better and better by the month. They're doing a very good job.
Hi, thank you so much. Thanks, Miguel.
Thank
So,
you.
ladies and gentlemen, before the session ends, please scan the QR code and provide your feedback or comments on the webinar. And lastly, I'd like to share with you about our skills and training advisory service. If you're not sure how to get started on your upskilling journey, you can sign up for the free one-to-one skills and training advisory session, where a skills ambassador will guide you in understanding your career goals and provide suitable course recommendations. Simply scan on the QR code and indicate SFM X Smart Nation in the mandatory field, how do you hear about us, at the bottom of the registration form. Our skills ambassadors will contact you within 2 to 3 working days. We have come to the end of the webinar and we thank you for joining us. Hope you have gained important insights from our speaker. Thank you and hope to see you in our other sessions.